Hi, I'm Uma Bangal and I'm a professor of film. I visit the US every fall, but in my other life in India, I am a filmmaker and a film teacher. And this project is close to my heart because it talks about two Dalit women who had to struggle to get what was rightfully owed to them by the government of Karnataka in South India. These were two Dalit women, and so the story spoke to me at a very deep level, because in India, very often the voices of women are rarely heard, and the voices of women from the Dalit community are even more silent. And so in a way, this was my way of giving their voice, getting their voice heard, and that too at the Supreme Court of India. Everything happened very serendipitously. I was on my way to conduct a workshop in short filmmaking and documentary filmmaking at Manipal Institute of Communication. And on the flight, I read an editorial that spoke about the struggle of these two women. And I was very touched and shocked, and I wanted to meet them. I went across, met them. They shared their story with me. Akku is very, very articulate and willing to talk about it, even though she was tired of having shared this story over and over again. One of the first questions she asked me was, what are you going to do? I've said this story to so many people and nothing happened. I've spoken to journalists, I've spoken to activists, I've spoken to the political leaders of my district, but nothing's happened. I'm fed up. It's now almost 18 years and I really don't have any hope. But okay, you're asking me your story and you're very nice, you're very sweet, I'll give you my story again. And she just spoke about it. And in fact, in the original version of this film, I have extended minutes of silence where she's just sobbing and saying, I don't know how I'm going to get along now. Everything is so bleak. I don't have any hope, and my only faith is still in God and Dr. Shanbag, because he's almost like a God who appeared in our lives and has guided us. Because during this struggle, he was getting them some fund. Every month he was giving them a stipend. And Leela Amma, in fact, wouldn't even talk. She would just keep crying. Every time I asked her to talk, she would cry and cry. So I had extended footage of them just crying and saying, what are we doing? You know, here are these two women. They're doing their job. They're not asking for anything. They're not trying to take away something from someone else. They just want what's rightfully theirs. Why can't we give them justice? So the original version of this film ended with the two women walking to school and then saying, all we are asking for is justice. Who can give it to us? And then, of course, when the film went to the Supreme Court as evidence, because these two women were ill and they couldn't travel all the way to Delhi and nobody could afford the fee. A lot of us got together, so it was me, my brother-in-law, Dr. Shanbag and his team, and some of my friends from Bangalore who were lawyers who took up the case. Nobody got paid anything. None of my crew got paid anything. None of us got paid anything for this film. It's not a commissioned film. It's just a film for activism and social change. And so we ended up sending the film and a team of lawyers to Supreme Court of India, because they had consistently won judgments in their favor from at all the levels of the legal justice system in India, but the government chose to go in contempt of the court rather than pay them what was due to them. And there were two reasons for this. One, because they're from two oppressed communities, the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe, and nobody really cares about their voices in Karnataka, which is quite often ruled by the upper caste. And the second reason was that if they paid these two women, it would set a precedent so that other people in similar work situations being denied their payments would also then file cases, and then it would snowball across not just Karnataka but across India. And so in a way, that was the reason the government was refusing to pay this and chose to go in contempt of the court. But luckily for us, the particular judge who heard the case saw this video, and in his mind, their plight was more forceful when it was presented in a visual form, as opposed to when the lawyers were just arguing about it in all the other courts. In this case, he actually witnessed their houses, their lifestyles, and just the long walk to work, and how grave an injustice is being done to the two of them, and their human rights are being denied. And so in a way, this video went on to become the final nail in the coffin for the government in that sense. And so then the ruling was in their favor. And even then, I think the ruling was in 2011, and they got paid in 2014, in spite of it being the highest court of law in India. But still, what happened was the mainstream media completely ignored the story. We would send reports, pictures, the film itself to all the channels and say, can you please spotlight this story? This is the struggle of two women. They need to be paid. And most of them refused. I'm so sorry, I touched that. So most of them refused, except two channels. One was Spandana TV in Karnataka, and in Tamil channel, we had something called the Makkal Kural. Makkal Kural translates to the voice of the people. And Spandana is a television channel that means empathy. I can feel what you feel. And so in a way, I guess that's natural. These are two channels that work to bring out the voices of people and not merely to increase TRPs with all your soap operas and so on. And so in the end, it became our struggle to get the media to focus on this. And the media came into the picture only after the Supreme Court judgment was enforced by a special leave petition, and then they got their compensation. So once the checks arrived, suddenly all the journalists and all the political parties that up until then were negotiating with us not to screen the film ended up coming and saying, can we have a press conference? Can we do this handing over of the checks in front of the whole world? Only then the mainstream media got into the act, and then they also began. And then I can share with you later on how many stories appeared in the media after the victory, after the money was given to them. But up until then, none of the channels, none of the newspapers wanted to even write about it. The only two newspapers that continued to give us space was Indian Express with their editorials, because it was Mr. M.V. Kamath, who was a former journalist, columnist, editor, author, all kinds of things. And of course, Dr. Shanbag, the human rights activist who writes a column in the Udayavani. So only these four media channels gave us space, and that's because they were already committed to social causes. Otherwise, mainstream media just doesn't care. And so it became a kind of mission for me, and it went beyond being just a film that I was making. It was more about making sure that I could somehow push till they got justice. And so for me, that was the biggest victory as a filmmaker. Not any of my other films that won awards or was seen by other distinguished audiences. This film is the closest to my heart because it actually resulted in something positive. And this is carried forward today by these two women and Dr. Shanbag, the rights activist. And I will continue to closely follow those stories as he moves around, hoping to get justice for more people like this. And so this is the story of Akku and Leela that I shared with you today. Thank you.
So my name is Kinza. I'm a first-generation Pakistani immigrant who grew up here in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Elena Solomon. I'm a fourth and fifth generation Jewish immigrant, I suppose, who also grew up in Chicago.
I think this film that we've made is about the immigrant experience. I was inspired to make it after meeting Elena, because talking to Elena, I realized that the immigrant experience transcends the boundaries of time and kind of sometimes repeats itself. And that's something I didn't realize while I was growing up. I thought it was just my experience and my struggle. But that other generations have gone through that struggle and they've found a space for them. It was very intriguing to me, and I wanted to see the comparison between the two.
And this project, I engaged in this project because Kinza and I work together, and I have spent the past 2 years working day in, day out with the Desi community, and I started to realize that their story is my story. Their immigration is quite similar to my family's, and this project was deeply meaningful to me because I was able to explore my community and their immigration process from 100 years ago, which I really hadn't talked about till now. It's not a huge topic of focus at this point. And hearing Kinza's life and her community's life and sharing mine, it really helped me frame my position here in the U.S. I'm labeled as white and I identify as white, but Kinza said that she simply sees me as an immigrant who made it. And framing it that way really allows me to understand myself and the U.S.